Hey team, it's time for an Early Career Designer's Portfolio Review. I'm Megan Thomas, and I'm a senior UX designer with almost 10 years of experience in enterprise software design. I've taught and mentored over 300 early career designers through UC Berkeley's UX UI Design Bootcamp. In this video, I'm going to review an early career designer's portfolio and share my thoughts as a senior designer. My goal is to provide actionable feedback to help them succeed as they look for a job in the UX industry. Join me for a stream of consciousness walkthrough as I assess one of their case studies. Remember, mine is just one opinion. Make sure to get multiple perspectives before making any changes. All right, let's dive into the review and learn together. Hi friends, I'm back and I'm glad to be in front of you again today. Thank you so much for everyone who was here to celebrate the 31 days of December portfolio reviews. I did get hit with a pretty bad migraine this week, so I appreciate your grace as I took a little bit of time off from doing these portfolio reviews. But I'm back. I'm excited. I'm so excited to see these. And today we've got Parth, Parekh. I am going to make terrible assumptions about whether or not I've pronounced your name correctly. You didn't add, I do ask when you add your name that you tell me how to pronounce it. So hopefully I made a good effort at that. And we're here looking at a product designer who's passionate about crafting accessible interactions and experiences through diligence, empathy, and enthusiasm. All right. A unique bridge between designers and developers, but then it kind of stops. So I want to make sure this is the very first thing that anyone's going to see about you on your website. Make sure it's a complete sentence. I would probably suggest taking this off unless there's some previous experience. Let me open your resume in a new tab. Maybe there's some previous experience you have as a developer that makes that, that unique bridge between designers and developers possible. That could be product designer, UX designer. Okay, this is a really long resume, but that's fantastic. It looks like you've got all sorts of stuff in here. All right, that seems reasonable, but I don't see necessarily anything development-wise looking on there, so that's fun. I'm also super curious about how you've got a tab up here in your navigation for design process. I think I'm going to go click on it. So you're creating solutions that are intentional and impactful. Each step should be connected to the previous one and provide a reason why the next one is needed. My design process is driven by four main things: empathy, mindfulness, experimentation, and aesthetics. Okay. Oh, well, I'm glad you actually have the process going further, because that is a little confusing, but hopefully this is a good explanation. All right. So I like to build with the user in mind at all times. If I can empathize, then I can advocate for a solution that people actually need. Mindfulness and intentionality go hand in hand. At every step of the process, I'm mindful that I'm still solving the right problem and ensure all design decisions are deliberate. Okay. Design is testing. I think testing out designs and getting feedback is the most rewarding, validating, and humbling part of design, and I live for it. Nothing gets my blood pumping like doing usability tests or seeing results of tests in the morning. And then, of course, aesthetics. I adore visual design. Creating high-fidelity prototypes and designs is my happy place and brings me a lot of joy. I tend to express this love through building design systems. Interesting. So you've got your design process, your principles. Those are your principles, and your processes: define the requirements, discover the issues, interpret the results, ideate over solutions, prototype, test, iterate, and test again. All right, I love it. Design philosophies, how I like to collaborate in my work style. This is actually very, very interesting that you include this because, okay, so my developer hat, with my background as a front-end engineer, I speak the language of the developers I work with. I think it's important to understand and empathize not only with your users, but also with your team. Knowing how to code helps me understand not only the problems the developers on my team face, but I can also explain to them precisely what I want in the design. Absolutely. This is really fantastic. This answers a lot of questions that people typically have about the design process. And this is telling me that you've actually spent some time using a design process, and that you've, even if this is completely, and I do not mean this in a disrespectful way, I kind of mean this to speak to everybody else who's watching. Even if you know a design process and it is one that you have been taught from your mentor or one that you've been taught in your boot camp or you've just learned, documenting it is a really helpful way to communicate your thought process. And this is how people typically ask, or what they mean when they ask in interviews, what's your design process? And this is exceptionally helpful. So you'd be able to send them, if you want to know about me before we actually meet for an interview, great. But also after the interview, just to reiterate my design process, the design principles, all of this is easy access now because you've defined it. Really good work. All right, so let's see what we got here. LinkedIn Design Challenge, improving job posting experience on LinkedIn, unleashing my research. I don't know why that feels weird. Unleashing my research. I feel like I want to lean into like the alliteration of it, but it's not quite the same thing. A closer look. Hiring managers hold the mystical keys to this, really? That's the design intern. UI design developer at Stevens Institute of Tech, user experience specialist, summer internship, key takeaways and insights. Ooh, Aria. Interesting. Okay. And then you've got self-learning case studies, Nourish Me, and self-learning heuristic evaluation, skills, user experience design, user interviews and research, web and application developer, web and application designer. Okay, that's cool. And you've got testimonials. Fantastic. Well, you specifically called out that you wanted me to look at this case study, and I'm willing to do that. So, Breathing AI's design system. I'm an experienced UX designer with a passion for creating inclusive and accessible digital experiences with a focus on digital accessibility. I feel like you need to have a comma there and then a lowercase w with a focus on digital accessibility. Love it. Oh, okay. Sorry. I just realized that actually has a comma. Let me rephrase. I am an experienced UX designer with a passion for creating inclusive and accessible digital experiences. With a focus on digital accessibility, I spent the spring 2023 as a UX design intern on Breathing AI's design system team. Nope. I still believe that the way I was reading it is the right direction. So focus on accessible digital experiences and with a focus on digital accessibility. Reword this. This is a little too long. I would focus this on just a couple of lines and say, I'm working with Breathing AI to build a design system. During this time, I learned and educated my peers about core inclusive design principles. I also created design systems documentation. This would be a really good opportunity for you to, so this is typically how we start out the case studies. Here's the problem. Here's the potential solution. What I always love to call out for people, make it easy for the hiring manager. Make it as easy as possible for the hiring manager to visualize you in the role that they're hiring for. So something that helps them do that, they already know the need that they have. They might be building a whole team from scratch, but that's not typically, and then I don't have data to support that. So I'm really waiting for someone to come in and be like, well, actually, I would say that it's less typical for someone to be hiring an entire team from scratch than it is for them to hire one or two people on a team where they know they have certain skills, like a web of skills. If you look at the Nielsen Norman group, you can look at how your team's skills overlap, and they're looking for people to fill in the gaps. So they're looking for people who have specific skills that are the gaps that need filled on the team. So this is a really good opportunity to say this entire case study is focusing on educating my peers about core inclusive design principles, creating design systems documentation for product teams to apply their custom solutions, and delivering high quality, high fidelity designs. This would make it easier for a hiring manager to know at a glance what is helpful about this case study, to know whether or not you're even the right person to continue reading on this case study. Maybe it's more beneficial for them to go to another case study and go, oh, we actually have this need, and this case study is very clearly about UI design versus design systems or design system documentation. So having that bullet pointed, if possible, explanation of the things that you do would be super beneficial for hiring managers. All right, so problem. I will say that this is not very compelling. this visual landing page, this top half right here is not exciting. Give me a reason to scroll down further. So right now I'm going to scroll down further because that's what I'm doing. This is my job. I am going to review your case study, but a hiring manager who doesn't see something that is immediately helpful for them, helping them make a decision, it's just eating up time on the clock, and they are more likely to say, this doesn't really have what I need, so whatever. So give them something exciting to start with. All right, so when I started working at Breathing.ai, there was no design system to speak of. As we grew product features and capabilities, we needed to scale designs and componentize our UI elements. Solutions: establish and document a unified source of truth for components, color, typography, and all other styles across Breathing.ai features. I think what you mean there is a solution. Take off that S. Impact of building a new design system: faster design process, better cross-department collaboration, higher product quality, clear brand guidelines. This is helpful. I would even maybe, just to add some visual interest. Okay, cool. You can't disclose all visual details. Contact me for more information. No worries. Something that I would give is just some sort of visual up here, maybe to the left, maybe to the right. It doesn't matter, but give some kind of example of what is interesting about what I'm about to see. So the impact of building new design systems. This is interesting. I would create or find some sort of illustration to kind of boost this and call out why this is so important, because the solution is to build the design system, but what is the impact? That is actually the important part here. Everyone, depending on what size product you have and what size team you have, will eventually develop some sort of like standards and guidelines for how to use the visual design system, the pattern library, everything that we create. But the impact is the power. That is what we want. We want to change. We want to impact how quickly we can get products out the door because we can use a faster design process. We want to have smoother collaboration and less siloed teams. So this is the impact, is that better cross-department collaboration. It will impact product quality and speed to market. Like, this is huge. Call this out a little bit more. It's actually sad that it's an even smaller font than this other stuff. Okay. So you did the audit, performing a UI audit. I took screenshots of every page of Breathing.ai products, and I made each one screen list with the UI elements they contained. Tighten this up. This feels a little convoluted, but you took screenshots and you made a list of all the UI elements they contained. Perfect. Your primitives, high-level patterns. See, I would even call this out. Give me a visual on this. So primitives, components, and elements. So primitives are setting what the colors are, from the strongest color, dark gray, to the lightest dark gray, or the lightest gray that you might use. And that helps create elevation in your designs. So don't forget that hiring managers may never have created a design system. So primitives isn't necessarily a word that translates for them. So explain to them why you provide so much value on the team, and you even call it out. You educated your peers. Do that here too. Educate the hiring manager or the recruiter who also doesn't know what a primitive is. So this could be, wait, do I actually have a little? I do. I can draw on here. All right, let's see what happens. Ooh, that's gross. This is terrible. Clearly a visual designer here. I would do primitives, components, and elements, and maybe even, I didn't know they disappeared. Weird. Interesting. All right, well, we'll call that done. But I would call out a couple of things. Make it a little bit more visually interesting here by breaking up that one into, like, what are these things that I did, and do a little bit of educating for the recruiter so that the recruiter goes, oh, this person really knows what they're talking about, and I should definitely use this as an example of why they're a good fit when I pass this person along to the hiring manager. Yeah. So building components and documentation, take the S off of documentation. It is singular. It is kind of like fish and fish, sheep and sheep. So documentation is just not pluralized. My next step in the process was to create the components of all UI elements in Figma, and documentation, say not just create documentation, but documentation for what? What is included in that documentation? I know you can't share a lot because of non-disclosure agreements, but this part's not under non-disclosure agreement. Documentation for how it will be used. What is that documentation? Don't give me images that would be under an NDA, but give me an example of what that documentation might create. So, and I'm talking about, let's look at material design, not Matthew Perry, material design. Let's just get over here because I want to show you. I know you've already seen this. Let's see. Oh no, foundations. Is this what I'm looking at? Styles, components. There we are. God, everything's changed now on an M3. So here's the checkbox. So if you've designed a checkbox, you have, you should say labels should be scannable. Selected items are more prominent than unselected items, something like that. That is the level. Well, that's specs, guidelines. Is that what I mean to say? Usage. This is good. So give an example of how you have directed people to use the checkbox or like some interesting component and documentation. You don't have to show all of them. Show me how you have documented something and some kind of interesting, like we don't use this in this type of screen, but we do use this in X type of screen, something like that. So that it's not just screenshots and, oh, I love the states, focus, hover, the buttons. That's great. That's actually a really good visual. I feel like for your coworkers and yourself, like this gray should be a slightly lighter shade of gray so that these lines are a little bit more clear and visible, but this looks good. Okay. So these are sort of documentation. These are the states for the buttons. But yeah, giving an indication of additional documentation, and maybe you're also doing that. Oh, you know what? Here we go. Buttons. So maybe a line here of like, here is an example of the multiple states for buttons, the primary, secondary, ghost, tertiary, error, success, etc. Give me a line here because that was a really confusing stop. This looks like the exact same header size, font size 26 pixels. Get out of there. Get out of there. And then I bet this is font size 26 pixels as well. Okay. Also, I'm going to suggest that if you're talking about accessible digital experiences, I should be able to look for hierarchy and other accessibility benefits, what about accessibility things. It should be pretty clear. So you've got just span classes here with divs, but I don't see, so you got section ID. This could be a header, but you did not make that a header. So basically everything on this page is the same hierarchy to a screen reader. Now, we can't make assumptions that hiring managers are never going to use a screen reader, and especially if you are going to say inclusive and accessible digital experiences with a focus on digital accessibility, you need to be bringing some accessibility to your portfolio. All right, so you've got the buttons. Micro and macro systems thinking for multiple use cases. The typical user interactions for control inputs are its unselected or selected states. However, one control element can contain a variety of use cases that multiplies to a greater number when applied to other control elements. Design system thinking requires a merge of visual design application and user psychology to think about technical refinement and human behavior interacting with the interface. Yo, it's too high of a level. It tells me you know what you're talking about, but it also tells me that you really like to use a lot of 50-cent words and sound smarter and not actually talk to people in plain language. So if you want to come across as like really good at communication and really good at helping your team understand things, make this simpler, make this easier to understand, easier to process so that someone doesn't go, oh, the visual design and user psychology. Oh my gosh. After getting the context of, and also paragraphs, this is a lot of words and it's a really small font. After getting the context of how these pre-generated control designs and color palettes are used in the system, I was able to experiment and articulate each interaction state with purposeful shifts in color to indicate a particular user behavior, i.e. darkening for hover states, fading for disable states. Just say that. Just say that I use color to indicate particular user behavior. It darkens for hover, fades for disable, and I documented that so that people can refer back to the design system and know at a glance what decision to make. But this is helpful right here. Component properties. Love this. This is just word salad. It's not word salad. It all makes sense. Word salad is actually more like a chopped salad of like everything's in here. This makes sense. It's just too high of a level. Checkbox. Again, add a couple lines here just to say, hey, we did this because it was really meaningful, and this is how we specifically used it in the app or whatever. Controls, documenting control elements, including checkbox, radio buttons, toggles, and switches, includes best practices, interaction, implementation, accessibility, and globalization considerations. That's a perfect small amount of explanation. That's perfect. Tabs and horizontal navigation. If this is supposed to be, I think this is meant to be a hierarchy. Like this text with the underline is supposed to be a higher level than the controls documentation, singular. But I'm not sure because I can't tell the difference between those text sizes. So I would love if you could make that a little more clear. Tabs and horizontal navigation, clarifying focus states for keyboard tab order accessibility. This is about the level of like 1 to 2 lines. Keep it simple. Making guidelines approachable. New revamp, I helped establish the documentation structure with dedicated sections outlining principles and guidelines of accessibility and globalization. You found that calling attention to these sections within each component documentation overview can help internal product teams be aware of efforts while designing custom solutions. Implementation, that is also singular. The final step of the design system was applying the updated UI elements to our products. I led ticket management in our Jira Kanban board. Ooh, okay, so first, this feels like it should be a new paragraph. So after this products, this should be a new space. And this is actually like, I would call this out. A lot of designers do not have experience working with the Jira system or any sort of ticketing system or using the Kanban method of like managing those tickets. So this is actually huge. This lets hiring managers know that you understand the agile or some variation on agile process and how you might use both Jira and other Atlassian products to document stuff. This is awesome. Okay, file organization. Yes, love that. Design system components. I would even call this out. This is another opportunity to do like 3 boxes and give me some kind of visual interest here on the page. So design system components, we created a UI kit, style guide colors, other non-component styles, product components. If these are something that is part of the implementation, give me a little visual. And then by taking the time to establish a design system and shared library of components, creating new designs for breathing AI products has become a streamlined process and will undoubtedly increase accuracy and efficiency. All product team members, from product managers to contract designers, use the design system on a daily basis and adhere to the system's guidelines. Great. I love that you also have the inclusion of the additional projects that you could look at. Book my route. That's really interesting. And that you have the ability, look at this. I don't know if anybody, I can't move my mouse, but right down here at the bottom left of the screen, there's a mail to, and then it has a question mark at the end of gmail.com and then subject equals. You can actually exploring candidate for right opportunity, looking for secret recipe of this design system. That's super smart. It's very sassy and it may not resonate with everyone, but that's super smart. I love it. Fantastic. All right, Parth, I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to review your portfolio, and I sincerely hope that this feedback helped you maybe make a couple of adjustments and refine this case study. Oh my gosh, as I stutter, refine this case study just a little bit more, but I think you're doing fantastic and I'm excited to see your career take off. Everyone else, thank you so much for joining me. Please clap it up for Parth and let me know if there's anything that you'd like me to dig into in a future video, something you'd like to know more about. I'd love to know what questions you have. So have a fantastic afternoon, everybody, and I'll see you tomorrow.